Hello, everyone. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a few of the important, particularly JavaScript concepts. So that we usually, and most of the time, we require those things in the LWC. So before we go further and learn like how the how the different things work into LWC, let's first concentrate on a few of the basic thing. But then these are some of the kinds of uh, what to say will be like some of the kind of uh, beginning knowledge that would help you out when you go further and learn the detailed LWC concept. So I'll do one thing. First of all, let me try making a login into one of the desktop which I have created for this purpose. All right. So as I've told you in the beginning, I mean, this is not for exactly for the beginners. You must at least have a few basic understanding with the LWC. So what I'm going to do would be like, I'm going to authorize one of the So how I going to do this? Let me just try to repeat those steps. So the very first thing what needs to be done is like you should create a project inside in your VS Code, and how to do that would be you can press Control plus Shift and P. Control Shift P would eventually open this dialog box in front of you where you have all these commands. The first, as you can see, is create a project with manifest. So you need to select this option. And there are three options, standard, empty, and analytics. For the LWC projects, every time we are going to select the first one, which is standard. Now, over here, you need to give some of the example, whatever the name you wanted to give for this project. So I can give any name for this one. Giving a relevant name is always something which is recommended. So what we are going to do would be I'll have to just give a name like I'm going to give the name as basic LWC, not LWC example. It should be basic JavaScript concepts. Spelling, lots of spelling mistakes. Concepts. Okay. So I'm giving this name. You can give out any name, but always remember the name should be relevant to what you are designing. Now, this would ask you with this dialog box, we need to select where exactly you wanted to store all those things. So accordingly, you have to give the path and be giving this inside a folder. I already have one folder for Lightning, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, this one. And somewhere around over here, I would be creating this. So this was the first thing. Like what you just have did is you set up your VS Code that you are going to create. I mean, one of the project. So this is like how you can select this and you can create this. Now the second thing is to authorize an org. So when saying authorization of an org is actually like it in detail, it means like we are connecting this Visual Force, uh, sorry, this VS Code, Visual Force, this VS Code with one of our Salesforce organization. And for the practice point of view, we all know that we have to create a developer account. But the way which we are going to implement it right now, like the way which I would be connecting this VS Code with this project to one of my Salesforce account. And this process is going to be same every time. Either you are connecting it with a sandbox. Most of the time, it's always going to be a sandbox. However, this developer account is technically it's a production. Then I usually have not seen like we connect production with in a real time scenario rather we don't connect the production with your VS Code. It's always going to be a sandbox. But for this purpose, for the training purpose, what I'm going to do would be like I have one of the developer account, which actually is a production. So I'm going to connect this. I'm going to make a connection between this VS Code project and that developer account. So again, command would be the same. Control plus Shift P. Otherwise, you can definitely go and from here you can find those commands. But it's always good to learn the shortcuts. Now, because you already have created a project, that was your first option. You have to select the second one, which is authorized and all. And when you click onto this authorized and all, this would give all these options. Usually what happens in real time is like, whenever you connect the VS Code, it's always a sandbox because as a developer, we always work in any form of sandbox. It could be your developer sandbox, could also be the developer pro, could be your partial copy or full copy, whatever it is the type of sandbox. But uh, being a developer, we never do any sort of changes, any sort of coding on the production. However, in the production there is no way to do the code because any sort of coding is always restricted. However, the out of box kind of functionalities where the configuration sort of functionalities like creating a flow, creating your approval processes and custom object, custom fields, creating relationships, formula, validations. So these are some of the kinds of things which are usually enabled on the production, but it is always recommended that not to make any changes in the production because it actually contains the business data, the actual forms of business data. And if mistakenly, if just because of the ignorance, just because of uh, the wrong way of doing something, if you would have created, let's suppose if you have created a flow, a scheduled flow, or maybe a similar kind of functionality, and it has impacted the business data. So it's going to be a very great disaster, believe me. So it's always recommended that you shouldn't do anything directly on production. We always connect sandbox. But with this case, because I am telling you this, like I'm going to connect this VS Code with one of the developer org. And developer org, by the way, they are always production. So I'm selecting this option production. Although, as I've told you, in real time, we usually select sandbox. So I would be selecting one production. We can give some sort of, when you say Eli's name, it actually means some sort of nickname to this connection. It's not like you'll always have to give it, but if you want, you can definitely give this. So as of now, I'm just skipping it. I'm not giving any name to this connection. Just a moment. Yes. All right. So I was saying like how we can connect this VS Code with our sandboxes with our Salesforce org. So again, I would be repeating the same thing. Go and press Control plus Shift plus P from your keypad. This would open this dialog box. You can select this option, authorized and all. Once you select, it would going to give you all these options, which what is the form of Salesforce org that we wanted to connect. So I would be selecting production, although in real time, we always go with the sandbox. Let me try with production. And this, this box actually asks you that if you wanted to give any sort of name to this connection, any sort of a lies name, any sort of nickname. So you can skip, you can give. It's up to you. I'm skipping, I'm just pressing the enter from my keyboard. So it is running a command to authorize the org, and then it would, let me show you that too. So it would go like this on your default browser, whether it's Chrome or what. I recommended Chrome always because Chrome again supports a few forms of extension, which is always helpful while doing our Salesforce stuffs and all. So basically, I always recommend to go with Chrome. Now these are some of them. This one particularly is my test or is my developer. So I would be selecting this one. Let me try and make a login into this. See, when you are doing this for the first time, so that time, you are not going to directly route to this authorized authentication successful message. Rather, whenever for the first time when you make this sort of connection from VS Code to the Salesforce org, so that time it asks you for a certain permissions to be get enabled, like Salesforce CLI permission, and there are a couple of few more permissions. So it would ask you to just click on that enable or some sort of OK And you are going to see that. So whenever for the first time you do that, you'll have to enable a few permissions. If I'm not wrong, it's actually, I guess, two permissions. One of them is enabling CLI. The another one I just forgot. I mean, I don't remember that honestly. But there are a few permissions that needs to be enabled for this purpose. And later on, once you have enabled, you are going to get this kind of successful. And one more thing which I wanted to add, I mean, sometime it might happen that the authentication get failed, and it happens due to it could happen due to various sort of reasons. Like sometime it is just as because of the poor connectivity, the poor bandwidth of your networks, or maybe a certain sort of loss of the informations, loss of the important tokens while this process is going on. So you don't need to worry about this. What you can do is go back to your VS Code and just try to repeat the whole process again, like Control Shift P, then authorize your select sandbox or production developer, and just you're going to route it back. So this might happen, and sometimes if you see that it's not getting authorized properly, you don't have to worry about it. All right, so now this is successful. What I can do is like, we don't require this window anymore. It was like, you just would have to close it out. We can close it out. It's not necessary to have this window. We'll go back to our VS Code, and once it has been authorized properly, you can see a successful message over here with the information icon that authorized and all successfully ran. And it would give some sort of information like which particular org and the org IDs, and if you can see the login URLs and everything. But in this case, it is login.salesforce.com. Why? Because I have enabled a production. Whereas if you would authorize the sandbox, this is going to be test.salesforce.com. Right now, once that is completed, so what I can say would be like, now this particular VS Code project, with this name, basic JavaScript concept, JS concept, whatever you have given the name. Now this is fully connected with the Salesforce org. And why we did this connection, we are going to see that later on. But now let's move on to the topic. Yeah, but before that, second thing what I need to be doing is to create one LWC component. So there are multiple ways to do that, not multiple exactly, but there are at least two ways I know by which you can create an LWC component. One thing is like what you can do is like you can go with the Force app tab, as you can see on the left side. You can expand this. Once you expand this, you are going to see the multiple options related to your Salesforce stuff. Like, you can see the classes and LWC and the objects and everything. And if you see there's this tab, sub tab rather, is LWC. If I would expand this, presently there is nothing because there are no LWC components referring to this project. So what we can do would be like, if the first way by which you can create an LWC component is you can go to this LWC create and click on the right button, the right hand side button of your mouse, and you will get this dialog box open, wherein if you would see all these options are there, but this in the bottom related to SFDC, these all are the options, wherein the first option itself is to create an LWC, the create lightning web component. If I would make a click onto this, it would ask me what should be the name of your component. Now that was the first way. Let me give you the second way. The second way, which we usually follow, is again shortcuts. And see, every time whenever I use any shortcut, I would going to, I would going to, I'm going to say, I'm going to say that I would be using this. Okay. So remembering the shortcuts is always good. I mean, that's usually a general practice. That's usually a general thing between developers that we usually make the use of keyboard shortcuts. Okay. So it would be a good thing, like if you start remembering those shortcuts of the keyboard. So again, I would be pressing Control Shift and P. And when I did that, these are the multiple options, but here you can see this is an option, create LWC component. But let's suppose if you don't see that, what you can do is like, you can just type SFDX and all the options that are related to Salesforce developer suite, they are going to appear over here. But if it wouldn't appear, again, what you can do would be like just press SFDX and press an enter. So this would activate SFDS command and it would give all of the options. So in my case, it is already enabled. So again, I would be pressed. I have pressed Control Shift P and all of these options. If I just wanted to see the options of SFDX, Salesforce development. So what I can do is like, I would just press SFDX and later on I'll search for create the LWC, create the Lightning Web Component. So if I would select that, you can see the options are same in both of the method. The options are same beyond this. So it would ask you to give any name. Like suppose if I would be giving a name called as the first concept which I wanted to explain is something called as spread operator. So I'm giving that name as spread operator. Now here I wanted to talk about when you wanted to give any name. So we are going in one of our video in one of our session rather, we are going to talk about the different forms of naming conventions that we are generally used in while developing an LWC component. And most of the company, most of the organization, they are followed. So this is our first component although, okay. This is our first component although, but then it's it would be a good thing like from the day one itself, from the very first component that we are creating that you will be going to create, we should follow the naming conventions. So the naming convention according to and I have told you like in one of my video I'm going to talk about like the different forms of naming conventions. So there are something like kebab case, there are something like camel cases, there are something. So I just forgot another one. There are 2 to 3 types of them. So we will going to see one detailed video wherein we are going to talk about different forms of naming conventions and how to use them. Okay, so for now, when we are creating LWC component, we should always follow something called as camel cases. We should always follow something, oh, not camel, kebab cases. Okay, just a moment, guys. I'm getting some messages. 1 second. Let me pause the video. Yes. So we were talking about like when we wanted to give the name to any LWC component. So there are a few of the naming conventions that should always be followed, and there will be one session wherein we are going to have a detailed discussion about the different forms of naming conventions like Pascal cases, camel cases, kebab cases, and all. Right now, yes, right now I wanted to introduce a case called as camel case. So whenever we are creating any LWC component, we should always name that as per camel case. So what does it means by a camel case particularly? So I'll just create it out and I'll give you an idea. So once again, I'm pressing this Control and Shift and P. Oh, Control Shift and P, and I selecting this option called Create Lightning Web Component. And now I'm giving that name to this, but it's going to be in the camel case. So see, my what is my convention is like, whenever I'm creating an LWC, this could be different. I mean, you can follow your own convention, but what I usually do is whenever I'm creating any sort of LWC component, the first word which I always give is LWC. Now, if you can see the first character L, the first character L is small. And later on, I wanted to give the name as like a spread operator. Spread P. Spread. So this type of naming convention where the first character of the name is always a small, later on, whenever you feel that this is a word, like LWC is a word. So the L is a small WC, okay, that's okay. But then after that, there is another word called a spread. So the first character of that spread, which is S, is in the capital case. Later on, operator again is a character. Sorry, it's a word. So the first character of that word again is in the capital letter. So this kind of naming convention, first of all, is called as camel cases. And my convention usually is like, I write down LWC if it's an LWC. If it's an Apex, so I usually write down Apex for the class's name, or maybe class, something like that. So basically, there are a few, it could be different, like, it all depends on you can again have some relevant type of this. Otherwise, you can use the same tool. So with this name, I just press the enter. It would give you two options. Select the first one, which is the default setting with all the default settings and every functionality whichever is present inside in this default classes. The first tab that's going to be inherited, that's going to be exported for this LWC component. So we wanted to give that. We wanted to go with like this only. So now your Lightning Web component, as it shows the message, has been created successfully. Okay, I can understand this is not from the basic, and I have already told you these sessions are not for the beginners actually. I have found a lot many good videos on the YouTube wherein you can go if you are like if you are just a beginner and maybe this is for the first time when you are looking onto things like this. So you will definitely going to find it a little difficult to understand although. So my recommendation would be like you can go and find out some basic videos onto the YouTube wherein they have explained how to install the VS Code and then how to go with like how to go with the basics of LWC, the concepts of object-oriented programming, and some of the videos they have explained like how LWC is far advanced compared to Aura, compared to other programmings, and what are the benefits with going with the ECMA 6 and all. But these kinds of video, it would require a lot of the patience and a lot of the time. But if you are looking this for the first time, I would rather recommend it that आप थोड़ा सा जाके पहले वो सारे videos देख लें because that would give you the basic idea. What I am preparing is little advanced and it is generally for those guys like those folks which have the idea about little idea in fact, but they know like how to work with the VS Code and they have a little bit idea with kind of programmings like Apex programming, a little idea about LWC and all, and they just wanted to brush up their concept. They wanted to get a more sort of hands-on, more detailed versions. Okay, so that is the reason I have not started with the basic forms of programming concepts and all. I've straightly started like how you connect your VS Code with one of the or and in today's in with this session with this particular which I'm recording right now, I would go with some of them with upcoming also. I mean, it's not going to entirely be covered in the same video, just in one video, because when I did a little research, I found that before we could go and start learning with the concepts of LWC directly, there are a few important concepts. There are a few important things. Some of them are operators, some of them are functions, and particularly JavaScript operator, JavaScript function, which you should have an idea. And if you know all those things, all those advanced concepts of JavaScripts rather, so it would become very easy to understand the LWC. So that is the reason, even I have came back one or two step prior to starting directly with the concepts of LWC. But then I cannot go and start with the very basic forms. I have found good material on YouTube. Everybody can refer from that. All right. So now coming back to this. So basically, see when you create an LWC component, usually three different forms of files are automatically created. It's not restricted to have those three. You can additionally add few more. I'm going to talk on that too. But yeah, so LWC in general consists of it's a bundle of three different forms of file. Three different. The first is HTML. Okay, HTML which would give what to say a front end type of whatever you require to be get visualized on the front end, whatever you require to be get displayed on your front end part. Okay, so that everything is going to be get coded inside your HTML. The second file is your JavaScript file, which functionally give all the business logic, client-side business logic, not with the server side. We're going to talk on that too. But yeah, the things which are going to be run, the codings that are going to be run in the backend of your browser. So those codings, those business logics, client-side business logic. When we say client-side, it actually means things. It actually means the thing that will run onto your browser and not with the Apex. Okay. Yeah, this is again used to make a connection with the Apex with the JavaScript. That's entirely going to be a different topic wherein We're going to have a detailed discussion. Anyways, the third is something called as configuration file. Uh, in a general terms, it is also called as meta XML. Now, meta XML is used to expose your LWC component to define where does we wanted to use this. If you are designing, if you're creating an LWC, where does exactly you wanted this component should be going to be get used. So it is in general terms, it is used to expose your LWC component, like where we wanted to use that component on a multiple places. Maybe it could be your uh, like your record pages, your applications, or it could be your OmniScript page, things like that. So we're going to see that, like as per the requirement, how to expose and how to bring the components, where to bring the components and all. Then later on, when we start learning about the decorator, so how to make property as a public, how to make the property as a global. That is again something which is being controlled from your meta XML configuration. Now, apart from these three files, additionally, what we can add is sometimes, as per the requirement, when we wanted to have a specialized form of CSS, a custom form of CSS, then we also create a few files. Now, how to create that, you just require to go with the root name, the name of your LWC component. The simplest way is to just click on this right button of your mouse, go with the new file. So with later videos, we are also going to see that how to create the CSS file, how to make that available to your components and all. So this was like how we can create your component. Now let's start with uh, the second, what to say, the second session, or I'll continue this within the second session where we are going to talk more about what is the purpose of a spread operator, how it helps you in most of the cases, and this kind of thing. So that we are going to cover in the next video. I guess that's all for today. Let me stop the recording first. Thank you so much for joining.